So first I want to start with a little introduction about me. My name is Sarah, and my cultural heritage is Jamaican. My father is from Jamaica, and my mother, she was born here in the United States, but she's Jamaican also. My sister's here, she has the red braids. She next to my friend over who has the red hair. It's really cute. So yeah, I'm proud of my family. I have 6 brothers, 2 sisters. I'm the first girl, so they call me the miracle child in my family, and I love them so very much. As we talked about a little bit earlier, I'm really passionate about people, community, and culture. I'm really passionate about people, but mostly I love connecting with people. One thing that I found as I've been taking social work and studying is that connecting with other people in the ways that we can, right? For me, I love to do therapy, I love to talk to people, I love to learn about their cultures, and to laugh with people. I feel like connection is almost more than it is just emotional, it's spiritual. For other people, it can be different things. It can be through art, it can be through poetry, it can be through helping others receive economic gain. It can be through so many other ways. It can be through serving. My passion is through social work. I found that it's been healing to feel connected to a bigger reality than my direct wants, needs, and worlds. Before I continue, I wanted to establish that when I say worlds, I mean it in a different context. I mean our own personal worlds. Meaning the things that shape the way that we see things, our culture does, our family does, our religious belief does. We all have our own little worlds that we live in, our own little realities. And so as I continue on, I'll use that word instead of world. Don't think earth, think world like your life, and how important and sacred that is, and others' lives and worlds are. So I wanted to also start off this talk with my intentions. On the goals that I have set out for this talk and the things that I hope to be able to destigmatize and to be able to reach. The first thing I want to do is open a conversation. I want us to start talking about these things because the reality is there is racism in every nation and in every system that has been in the world. Ever since colonialization, it has been a part of our international society, and it will be a part of international society. And the only way that we can destigmatize it and take racism out of the system or to heal our system is by starting to talk about it. And if we feel uncomfortable and doing those things, we will never change, and our world will never heal. So the next thing I want to do is I want to tip or two about how to not be racist, and learn how we all actually have a little bit of internalized racism within us. Whether you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Polynesian, Native American, there are things that we have internalized, things that we participate in, perpetuate, and continue racism in our own life and other people's worlds. So I'm here to help us figure out what those things are and to learn how we can stop them. I also want to take the shame out of learning. We all come from different backgrounds, yeah? And so some of us were born in the US, some of us were not. Some of us are black, some of us are Spanish, some of us are white. Some of us talked about race in our homes, some of us talked about racism every day. Some of us rarely talked about it. Some of us avoid politics or avoid those conversations to avoid perpetuating racism because that's how we were told. We were told not to acknowledge race, and so that way we're not racist. Or to talk about racism, that way we're not. So I'm here to educate about how we can continue on. And my last goal and objective here is to talk about how learning cultural humility, which means understanding that we will always be learning about culture, that there's always something new to learn about somebody, that we never know something about somebody just because they are a certain race or a certain identity, will help change our world, everyone else's world, and planet Earth, as far as we're moving on it. And we move from planet Earth to different planet, and that planet's here. Awesome. And so one thing that we wanted to talk about when we were talking about what I was going to talk about today is my experience here being black at BYU-Hawaii, and also within the system of all the BYUs, meaning BYU Provo and the incidents that have been happening at BYU Provo, and in Idaho, which I really don't know what's going on in Idaho, but because there's never really news about Idaho, but Provo, has some things going on. If you remember, you've been seeing it. I don't even know where to start. Where do you start? There's so many things. You start reflecting on it, and you're like, oh, that was racist too. And then you think about it, like, oh wait, that was racist too. I guess one thing that I'll start off with is, I'll start off with my hair. I notice this is the one thing that people feel the most comfortable acknowledging and talking about, which opens up conversation, but also opens up opportunity to perpetuate racism. So I've had a lot of times where, a little bit about black culture and about black hair. Black hair is very sacred. As you see, you'll see me on campus, for a month or two I'll have twists in, and the next month I'll have my afro out. The next month I'll have straight hair, the next month I'll have wavy hair, the next month my hair may be brown, the next month my hair may be pink. And naturally people have a lot of questions about how those things are changing and what those things mean. So just to give a little cultural tie, hair in the African community is tied back to tribes. That is the origination of different hair styles and textures and things like. So back in Africa, having Bantu knots meant that you were from this tribe, from this lineage. In certain tribes, people have dreadlocks. Right now in Jamaican culture, dreadlocks are a sacred hairstyling, where you put it to be able to commemorate your spirituality with the land and with God. So if you are not doing that, you should not be wearing dreadlocks. Spread the message, please. And also with braids. These things are meant to protect black hair and to be able to show lineage and connection to ancestry and culture. So if those are not any of the reasons why you're wearing them, it is cultural appropriation, which we'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later in this slide. But either way, people will come up to me and before they even ask where I'm from or what my name is, they'll come up and they'll run their hands through my hair. Even though I spent 6 hours braiding it, I was up all night using greens, and I don't even know if you wash them after you use the bathroom. We're not friends like that just yet. I love you, but don't run your hands through my hair. I don't even know you. I've had instances where people will ask me before they even ask how my day is, they'll ask, is that all your hair? Or people, one time I was working in an office and a professor came by the office every single day and asked me about my hair, every single day. And one day he asked, you know what, is that your hair? And I was in front of the whole group of all these other professors, and it was just like, now I'm going to air all my personal business out here to Sam, Dr. Seuss, like everybody. Like I was like, okay, do I want to have this conversation or not? Other ways that I've experienced racism here at BYU-Hawaii is in casual conversations with men who are trying to be really funny but aren't. And they'll come up to me and they'll make jokes about slavery and they'll make jokes about racial discrimination here in America. And I've heard people say the N-word in conversation with me. I have heard so many ignorant comments about poverty and about black people in connection to that. Everything that you can possibly think about, from the way that I look down to the struggles in my community, people have made insensitive racial comments about. And then before I continue on with the next slide, I want to talk about part of the BYU system and how it impacts me as a black person. As we know, a lot of interesting things have been happening at BYU Provo when it comes to, for example, the volleyball game. There was racial slurs shouted at black players. And the school, the most they did was sit a bodyguard next to this person. Didn't remove them, didn't send them a statement saying that is not okay, not condemning or anything like that. And in a way that fosters, I've seen a system that I love BYU-Hawaii. It'll be my alma mater, and if I ever become rich, best believe I'm giving money to the school. It has empowered me so very much. But there is flaws in this system where we tolerate things like that, tolerate racism, and then when we start having a conversation like the Black Panthers, the Black Menaces on campus, there's a lot of pushback about conversation about racism and acknowledging that. And so I just want to talk about how that continues to perpetuate racism in these systems, because then we feel like it's uncomfortable, that it's not right to talk about these things, it's not right to talk about how people are being discriminated against. Almost like we're kind of trying to hide it, which only festers, right? Things in the dark continue to fester, and they continue to grow, and eventually starts poisoning the community. The only way that we can heal is we bring these things to light. The only way that we can continue growing is we figure out what we can do about it, and that starts with talking about it. So, as we talk about, people are wild. Sometimes it's just kind of crazy. You kind of just want to be like, is this a real thing happening? Cut the cameras, bring out the crew. You did not just say that to me, or you did not just say that about that person. And at the time I was feeling all of those things, I really felt at the same time that some of these people really do not know what they're saying. They really don't think what they're saying is racist or know that it is. Because like we were saying beforehand, some of us come from so many different cultures. Some of us never talked about racism in our home because that wasn't necessary. It came from a homogenized culture where a lot of us were all black or white or Asian in our communities. There's no need to talk about racism because all of us are the same race. And so I wanted to write here that the truth is, whether or not we know something is racist, Your actions and words still hurt people. It hurts you in your world, in your reality, but it hurts the worlds that you interact with. And to learn about others' cultures and how to respect our identities is to love. And I would say to be able to love radically, and I would say to be able to love like the Savior has intended, the way that the Savior has planned out for us. And I know that when God made us, He was intentional in the fact that we all look so different. Beauty looks like so many things. God looks like so many things. God is not white or black or Hispanic or Asian. I don't know what God looks like. But there's a reason why we all look different. And I think there's something to love in that. So here is my section about racism and how we may see it in every single day. And it's like conversation. So before I begin, I will have literal things that I have heard in conversation, things I've experienced in my life, and some of them will be offensive. You will probably have seen them in media if you ever pay attention to pop culture media in the United States. You may have heard these things in conversation and didn't know how to acknowledge it. So I just want to give that trigger warning. Some of these things are offensive. Just know this is for educational purposes and not a stance that the school is making or I am making. So first I want to define what racism really is. So racism is a belief or notion that race is the primary determinant of human traits, whether that be positive or negative, and capacities that these racial differences result in inherent superiority or inferiority. And sometimes in ways that we may not think are wrong, right? For example, a lot of people connotate Asian people with being really good with math. Like every Asian person is really good with math, and no one thinks that's a negative thing. Like being good at math is a good thing. But what happens if you're Asian and you're not good at math? Does that mean that you're less Asian? No, of course not. So just breaking down even the positive stereotypes and what those things mean. Behavior attitudes reflect and foster this belief, and versus discrimination or prejudice. So that is also a part of racism. So I wanted to just give some examples of what racism can look like in our everyday. So racism can look like this. This little girl, I guarantee she's not trying to be rude or knows what she's doing. But the fact that she's going over here and petting her friend is kind of dehumanizing. Like, just think about this. Do you ever just walk up to somebody that you may or may not know, just randomly start stroking their hair? Is that a natural thing that you usually do to your friends? Nah. At least I don't be doing that. I don't think that the majority of us do. So just think about the racial layer and filter on that. Why does she want to touch her hair? She's never seen it before, probably, or she's never touched it. It's different from what she has known. This continues to kind of perpetuate this inferiority, because if she was someone else, she wouldn't do that. So imagine how this girl feels. Look at her, she's cheesing, she's smiling, she's trying to look cute for the photo. Do you think you want somebody stroking her hair? Her mama put oil in that scalp. You don't want her touching her hair, taking the product to pay $12 for on your hands. No, do not touch my hair, thank you. Next, these are a few examples of cultural appropriation. The girl in the orange suit, that's called blackface. These things are sacred things in these cultures. So in the left, I didn't know too much about this when I did my research, but this draws back to Southeast Asian religion. And religion to us, for example, is so sacred. Imagine, for example, if someone went to Halloween with garments on, or the temple clothing that we wear. Would that be funny, or would that be a costume? Of course not, right? Next we see here a man, and Hillary definitely didn't dirty with this one, but with the indigenous headwear. These things are sacred and part of rituals that have been in Native American, Indigenous Americans' celebration of life, of earth, and of God. That is not something you wear to a Halloween party for fun once a year. Next is blackface. Where do I start? So America has this very weird fascination. Well, American history has a very weird fascination with Black people in entertainment. And historically, Black people, they would do blackface, they would connotate and act out Black stereotypes. So in these films, they would have Black people perceived to be dumb, their hair to be unkempt, or their hair to be nasty, perpetuating racism and perpetuating stereotypes that are false, leading to, right, the way that we think influences the way that we make laws. The way that we think influences the way that we interact with people. The way that we think influences the way that we push about justice. So if you think that someone is less than or not as smart, how is that going to reflect in the system of those people? How is it going to reflect in the police, or in legislation, or in law? Our thoughts are so important because all of our words interconnect to connect a bigger one. So it matters what you think. It matters what you believe. So to define what cultural appropriation is, it is the use of objects or elements of a non-dominant culture. So that can be in America, right? The dominant people are white people, and other minorities are Black, white, Hispanic, Polynesian, things of that sort. In a way that reinforces stereotypes, like we're talking about with blackface, or contributes to oppression, like the first picture where the woman was wearing all that, she was painted blue and acting as a god from Southeast Asian religion, and doesn't respect the original meaning or giving credit to their source. So like when people wear cornrows, even though cornrows were used as a way to talk about identity, they were used as maps to be able to enslave to, oh, Abby's here. Okay, sorry, guys. When you have cornrows and they were actually maps to escape plantations back in Brazil. So when you see cornrows, literally, they're maps of freedom. Just think about hair. Black hair and black culture, don't get me started. It also includes unauthorized use of parts of our culture. So just not respectfully using that. So if you're going to use Black culture or Hispanic or Asian or Polynesian culture or European culture in your movies, film, music, the respectful thing to do is to pay respect to that culture, to give back some of the money that you make from their culture to them, because that wasn't yours, it was someone else's, so why should you get all the profit? You see what I'm trying to say? Okay, so these are the ways that these might hear sound like racism. Like, did you see who Elder Zip is dating? Yeah, she's Asian. She must have caught yellow fever, or he must have caught yellow fever. We see this with Black people too. He said, oh, did you see who Elder Zip is dating? Yeah, she's Black. He must have caught jungle fever. This is called racial fetishization. As the act of making someone an object of sexual desire based on some aspect of their identity. For Black, Indigenous, people of color, the fetishization of their race, such as ethnicity, is not a new phenomenon. These have been things that have been happening for so many years. For Black people, when Europeans came to Africa, there was a woman, this was like in 1856. If anything you hear like that's wild, please do yourself a service and look it up. Please learn more. But there was a woman, her name was Sarah. She lived in South Africa. When the Europeans came to colonize Africa, they were amazed and they were fetishizing her body because she had a bigger bottom, like a bigger butt, and bigger breasts. And so they made her an item of museums. They would have her around, and they sex trafficked her. And we continue to see this in American literature with Black women being idolized for their bodies, for young girls being sexualized when they're 13, 14. We can draw back to, what's that guy's name? You're Black, you know him. He does, I forget his name, but one day maybe I'll remember it. But this is racial fetishization. Racism can also sound like, oh, you're Latina, but you don't have a bachata. You're whitewashed. Oh, you're different, you're an Oreo. This connotates to like Black people. I've been calling Oreo my whole life, the dumbest stuff I've ever witnessed my entire life. But when I was growing up, I was really passionate about like documentaries and cultures. I still really am. And I like spoke a certain way. And so my friends who were like white and Hispanic, usually the big people who were Black and Hispanic, they would call me an Oreo, that I was Black on the outside but white on the inside because I wanted to learn more, or because I spoke a certain way. Like as a continent, being educated is a white feature and being uneducated is being a Black feature. And once again, I want to reinstate that racism isn't something that you do just because you're white. Racism is something that we all do. It doesn't matter what your skin tone is. And there's also racism that we have internalized inside of us. To continue on, phrases like you're a plastic Tongan, he's athletic for a white guy or for a white girl, or things like that. Those are all things that are based on stereotypes that perpetuate racism. And those things are not good because they influence the way that we think. The way that we think influences the world that we live in and the actions that we take. So one thing that I wanted to talk about was unconscious bias. Okay. Has it been 27 minutes? Okay, I don't really know if anybody knows, but it's okay. The next thing I want to talk about is unconscious bias. This talks about a positive or negative mental attitude. Before I continue on, I want us to do an activity. So, after you have learned about these ways of racism, okay, just kidding. 2 more. Okay. So, unconscious bias. So, unconscious bias is a positive or negative mental attitude towards a person, thing, or group that a person is unaware of having. So it can be a bias of like, oh my goodness, like I just feel more comfortable. I feel really like dangerous around this group of people, or these group of people being a certain way. The content of our unconscious biases are developed from an early age, meaning the biases that we have been shaped by our parents, the culture, society, and community that have been around us. So it is not something that when you're born out of the utero, you're born racist, or you're born out of the utero educated or woke. It was the things that were around you that influenced you. And when you're growing up, you don't really have control of those things. So I just wanted to say, like, don't feel bad about where you grew up or the things that you were taught to believe that perpetuated racism or homophobia or things of that sort. Be proactive in educating yourself. That is what indicates your character. Not exactly the things that you can't control, but the things that you can control. Based on our life experiences and repeated exposure to certain societal messages or ideas. Next is systematic racism, guys. This goes so deep, it's run so deep in America, and so deep as many other systems. I just know mostly America because I'm American. But policies and practices entrenched in established institutions, meaning like policies and beliefs and things that we practice that are deep in the systems that we have. So the justice system, the healthcare system, the welfare system, the education system, which result in the exclusion or promotion of designated groups. It differs from overt discrimination in that no individual intent is necessary. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. So I want us to do a little bit of an activity. This is going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but I want to invite you in this presentation to embrace what is uncomfortable, because that is the only way that we can grow. Okay, all right, so everybody close your eyes. After hearing about the ways that we have heard about racism, raise your hand if you have received racism or someone has said something racist to you. Okay, open your eyes. Okay, everybody look around. Look at all these people. Okay, close your eyes. Now after you've learned about racism and all the things that we've heard, raise your hand if you have been a person who has perpetuated this in your life or in other people's life. Raise your hand. Okay, everybody open your eyes. Okay, look at all of us. You see some of us are white, some of us are black, some of us are Polynesian. You don't have to be a certain race to be racist. And you don't have to be a certain person to have received racism. We all have received that. I'm so grateful for 12. Thank you so much for being so bold and being so courageous at showing that, because it's uncomfortable to say that. And it's not something that is commonly open for us to discuss and to grow from. So thank you for being vulnerable. This notes code was so powerful. I was finishing a little bit of a confession. So I was in my anthropology class and I was finishing this presentation. So, anyway, I was learning about anthropology and I found this quote and I was cheesing. I was trying so big when I saw this quote because it is perfect. The beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be anti-racist. But I'm going to read that again. That is so powerful. The beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. We all have racism inside of us. This isn't something we can control. We were just born in certain places, and society is the way that it is right now, right? You were born into this world. What we're in charge of is changing it. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. Think, this guy, whoever this person is, wise. And it's the only way forward. That is the only way we can change the world to become the world that we want it to be. The world that we want our kids to inherit, the world that we want to live in. And so the next thing that I want to talk about is how do I stop practicing racism? Like how do I weed these things out of me? How do I stop perpetuating them? How do I keep growing? I love this. So this was underneath the website of, so the government has a sector of it that is specific for including diversity, inclusion, and making sure they're unified and things like that. And so I just wanted to read this. Unconscious bias can be combated on the personal and organizational level. Here are some tips to address personal bias and personal. Okay, one of the first things is to acknowledge your bias. Acknowledge where you come from, acknowledge what people you feel comfortable around, what people you're around and you feel dangerous. Oh, I wrote down some things that I thought were really cool. Do I feel fear or do I feel comfort? Do I feel angry or do I feel uplifted? Learn more about you. Acknowledge your privilege. For example, being white in America is a very real thing. White privilege is a very real thing here in the United States. Being white in America, the fact that you never have to think about certain things, about whether or not you're going to go into, or whether or not you're going to the hospital and give birth. Did you know that black women have a 3 times higher mortality rate when they're giving birth to children? And that black babies are likewise. And then next, I think it's twice as likely for Hispanic women to die in labor, and also their children die in labor just because they're Hispanic and just because you're Black. Did you ever even have to think about that? I didn't know that until now. If you watched it 10 years ago, but it's kind of wild just thinking about it. But think about how many ways you being white will result in a safer and healthier life in the United States. Think about how Black people are overrepresented in jail with Black people, Polynesian people, Hispanic people, things of that sort. If you're Black and in Africa, think about how it affects. You never have to think about being a minority. Extend your comfort zone. Learn about new cultures. Make an effort to listen and understand people or cultures that are new. I love that. Extend your comfort zone. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Take responsibility for mitigating biases. It is your responsibility to change yourself and to learn, to change the world, to make the world become the world that you want it to be. That is your responsibility. If you want something, you need to be the person leading that. Admit mistakes. Or leading that, more like be proactive in that. If you want to see something be different, be proactive and bring change. Normalize the conversation about bias and racism. And then take the pledge in your heart to do those things. Write it down. Be sincere about it. Understand that you will always be learning. You will never know everything about others and their different cultures. That is both something that's daunting and incredibly exciting. There is so much to learn. There is so much that you don't know. Doesn't the world feel bigger? Doesn't the world feel like it's so much more full of possibility and opportunities and new people to meet, new people to connect with in new ways? I find that freaking awesome. It's so cool. So continue to learn, to challenge, and to accept self and the racism we practice or receive. Because I believe the most sustainable change is based on love and not on shame. This is called cultural humility. As you start learning about other people, interacting with others, exploring comfortable or unfamiliar, you understand the world becomes bigger. Our world becomes bigger. So much full of possibility and light and hope. That is my favorite feeling. My favorite feeling is hope because it's kind of like anger. Okay, in social work, anger is not a one emotion, it's a secondary emotion. Meaning there's emotions behind it. So if you're angry, it usually means that you're sad about something or you're disappointed. There's another emotion behind that. I like to believe that hope is a secondary emotion too. Because when you feel hope, really behind it is faith, it is joy, it is peace, it is energy. Learning about other people are all those things. It is hope and it is power. Continue to learn. Be okay with the fact that you don't know everything, that there's some things that you learned that you didn't want to, but you're okay because now you're learning how to change those things so you're aware of them. And this is one thing I wanted to end on that I thought was so beautiful. In Genesis, in the church, we talk about how God had made us the caretakers of this earth. Right? When we first think about that in that context, my first thought was, God made us the caretakers of this earth, so that means we need to make sure that the planet is green, that we stop polluting the air, that we stop putting plastic in the ocean, and that is our responsibility also. But I also like to believe that God not only meant the environment, but our societies and our communities. God has put the world in our hands in order for us to make a better place for all of us, for our kids, for ourselves, for our friends, for those that we love. He has given us this calling, and it means He's given us the power to change the world. I believe in every single one of you, and I believe in myself that we can make the world the place that God has intended, a place for all. I almost let into my testimony because we played this here, but I just want to say that I love God, and I love you guys, and I'm so grateful that you came. And that all of you guys can make this world a better place, especially if you believe that you can, and that we can change. I love God, I love BYU, forever Sea Cider, BYU-Hawaii, because BYU Pro, all of them, I forget this is BYU, all of the BYUs, Idaho Pro, and Hawaii. But I just want to say that we are the people that will make the world the place that we want it to be. We are those people. And I say these things to make you start saying it. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So, this is just our time for any questions we have for Sarah, a little Q&A session. So, she'll just have about 5 minutes to answer some questions. You should raise your hand and she'll call on you.
Perfect. Okay. Please ask questions. Any hands? Any curiosities? Yes, Sierra.
Hi. Also, I could have listened to you talk all night.
Oh, you're sweet.
But what is, in your opinion, what is the best way to be proactive about being anti-racist on campus specifically?
I would say when you hear like,
Sarah,
yes.
we couldn't hear the question. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Okay. So she was asking what can you do to be proactive here on campus to fight, like, to promote anti-racism and to like stop racism and to continue education. My answer to that would be was to just kind of like speak up. When someone says something that's kind of racist or off color, not to necessarily shame them or to label them as like you are a horrible person, more just be like, ooh, you were probably raised in a racist place. I'm sorry about that for you. This is why this is racist. Then after that, this is what I decided to be able to protect my personal peace. If someone still decides or supports those beliefs they had, then they are being proactively racist. If they decide they don't want to change, they don't want to learn more or like fight the racism inside of them, they're racist. And they're continuing to perpetuate racism. So that's what I would say. Just speak up. Be like, hey, like, I'm really uncomfortable with that. That's like not a really good thing to say about certain people. Like that's a stereotype. And kind of educate why. That's what I would say. Next question. Yes, in the back.
How do you learn about and participate in other cultures without becoming or appearing racist? Or like, how do you be interested in different culture without feeling like that's the only thing you're interested in? Does that make sense?
Interesting. So basically her question was like, how do you like respectfully participate in cultures and like also like we always talk about like the perception of participating in other cultures. One thing that I've noticed too with being like I have friends who are white and have communicated this concern to me, and also cultural appropriation in America is really targeted towards white people. How they are afraid of being like something they're taking or borrowing or stealing culture. I would say sometimes it's hard to control how what people perceive about you. So people may think certain things. I think what happens if you're going to participate in a culture, learn the meaning of those things that you're participating in. Think about, okay, is this sacred? What is the purpose of these things? Okay, am I doing it for that exact purpose? Okay, then yes. If I'm wearing, for example, if I have kind of straight hair or fine hair that isn't afro texture or curly, do I need to wear braids? No. But can I think they're beautiful? Yes. I think there's certain things that are okay to participate in, and there's certain things that are not. And I think it's important that you be educated in all things, whether you participate in them or not. But being mindful whether or not they are sacred or whether or not they're communal. If it's communal, I think it's safer to participate in those things. If it's sacred and to protect, I would leave it for that culture, if that makes sense. Also, may I say, I can't be wrong. I am not the anti-racist professor or perfectionist. I have my own internalized racism. This is my answer for what I think. I feel like it's a good answer, but some people may say, if you're white, you participate in white culture. If you're black, you participate in black culture. But we're at BYU-Hawaii, we see how that doesn't really work. So, I don't know. That's what I personally believe. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Sister Spreaker.
First of all, I want to say I apologize for the poor behavior of others on this campus. I'm not personally responsible for that, but I know it means a lot to have somebody apologize for that. And I apologize on behalf of that story they told about a professor because we should all be united in our behavior. That's not how I feel at all. So, also want to say that I love Sarah Francis.
We love Sister Spreaker.
And I say Sarah for president, but maybe that's not your plan. But it's your plan, yes. We're clapping over here. Over that.
Yeah, you're so nice.
But what are your plans when you leave this lovely space that we get to share?
So, my plans to leave this late. Oh, you mean like
Your future. If
my
you're not
future
president.
plans. Oh, my president. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no. But I feel like you have a gift to so eloquently share messages with all of us. And I feel like that's something that the rest of the world needs to see. So obviously they're listening to you. So I don't know what your plans are, but
So funny. Okay, you remember a little bit earlier where I was bashing BYU Provo? I take that back. Except me. So my plan is, because I'm a poor student, and I'm paying for college on my back right now, I would like to continue my master's I really wanted to do it at HBCU, but going $40,000, HBCU means historically black college or university. I really want to do it at a university like that, but going $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 into debt is a little unrealistic for me. And so I'd love to go to BYU Provo. Hopefully they see this. I graduated here. But I want to go there and continue my master's in social work. And to there, go off, and I would love to be a therapist and to be able to help people who have trauma associated with racism, specifically working with the black community, and do things like that. I'd love to do macro social work, which means things that are working on the organizational, like political scale. I'm not too, politics is just a little too cloudy, a little too jaded for me right now. I need to be a little more hopeful if I'm going to be a president or senator. But, you know, things change. I love politics though. So yeah, that's what I want to do is my plans. Okay, any other questions? If not, my name is Sarah Francis. I'm on campus. If you see me, please stop me. I love talking, as you can see. My Instagram is sarah.a.friend. So follow me. I'm kidding. If you want to shoot me a message, go ahead. But that's it. All love, guys. All love. Thank you.
We would just again like to thank Sarah for joining us this evening and for her sharing her experiences and empowering us and teaching us tonight. I'm going to close this event with a prayer.